All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Terry Lee Hamilton, who's going to look at part one, the statistics section.
Hello, everyone. Yes, so I'm going to look at it from the perspective of people, and others who are wise with dollars will continue in that section. Just to give you a quick idea in terms of statistics for the Presbyterian Church, you can go right back to the very first Acts and Proceedings in 1874 and see that there were statistics created. And over the years, the formats have changed, but in many ways, the general information that we gather, at least for the Acts and Proceedings, have remained somewhat similar. In other areas, it has affected both dollar basis for Presbyterian sharing, as well as that for the pensions. So if you want to have a historical picture, that's where you go. So we're going to look at the structure in the statistics section. And this will give you an idea on who is your minister or who are your ministers, and then as well as a little bit about the makeup of your congregation. So part one, it starts with the number of elders who are on the session, and that is your current membership of the session. The other thing that we would like to know is whether or not your session uses term service. And term service means that a session elects elders for a period of time. At the end of that time, they go off and there is an election again. Other sessions will not have this term service. So when one is elected and either inducted or installed on the session, that individual is there until he or she resigns or dies, if I can put it that way. But there is that term service. And so we will have that as information for us. The other line talks about the number of children within the congregation, and we ask for that within the ages of 0 to 8 years. And that can be whether they are participating in a church school or any other types of youth programs. Line number 6 deals with a household. How many households do you have? That could be one person. So for example, I'm single, therefore I would be classified as one household. Another household may have 5 people of the church living in there, but in any case, they are each classified as one household. And a household will include those who are adherents. An adherent is someone who supports the life and the ministry of that congregation, or a professing member, and that definition is defined in the Book of Forms, and that is one who has been admitted by the session to the fellowship within the congregation. Line number 7 outlines the number, or section number 7, outlines baptisms. And so there are 3 boxes there. One is for anyone who has been baptized as an adult or who has been baptized as a child, and then automatically the 3rd box will be calculated in the STAT program. On to the next one about professing members. One of the things to be very careful with this one is to ensure that the number that you enter first is the number which you had as last year's in your statistical report for the number of members in your congregation. If you don't have that stat form, you can check the Acts and Proceedings for those stats that were submitted, and or go back and check your annual report from 2019 that will outline the members. And then from here, you will note those who will be added by profession of faith or those who have been added by certificate of transfer. And both of these are done by act of the session.
Terry Lee, your sound just lost, so we lost your last sentence. Can you just repeat that?
Okay, so
it's working fine. It was like a little hiccup that it just blanked out for a minute.
Yeah, I get lines about interruption of internet here. So in terms of the membership, people are added either by active profession or by certificate transfer, and that's always done within the session. So those numbers should be within session records there. And then once that goes through, then the totals will be added up. On line 9, you're going to be asked for the number of adherents within your congregation. And This is going to be only those adherents who are over the age of 18 because children are calculated on an earlier line. So the other part of membership is for those who have been removed. So we may want to go back one slide. So removals, similar to those who are added by certificate, a family leaves your congregation, a member leaves your congregation to another, you grant a certificate. Other removals are by death or by revision of the roll, because sessions have the responsibility to revise their rolls annually. And then once those numbers are entered, then you will have the auto calculations that are there. And again, we also mentioned about the adherents who are under the congregations and the sessions, pastoral care for that. So this gives you a sense of the numbers of who are associated within the congregation.
Heather, I think we'll pause before I do weekly worship attendance, and we'll just see what questions people had about these numbers, because I saw
Sure.
past
Yes.
popping up in the boxes.
Okay, so first question, is the current minister also included as a member?
No. The reason for that is that a minister is not a member of the congregation. He or she is a member of the presbytery and is tied to the congregation. So you would not calculate either you're a minister or any other minister or diaconal minister who might be called to your congregation.
Okay, and what about a retired minister?
A retired minister, if that retired minister is what we call a minister in association with the congregation, that person can be calculated as a member within the congregation.
Okay, does the household count include only households with at least one member, not adherent only households?
No, it would include both members and adherents.
Does baptism include those who have been baptized in other denominations?
No, what baptism would be is those baptisms that occurred within your own congregation during that year.
Okay, does each person in the same long-term care facility count as one household or multiple?
A very good question.
Multiple.
Yeah, I think we would see the individuals as one household. So if
Well,
there were,
Yes.
yes, yeah, so if there were 3 members in the retirement home of X, they would be seen as 3 households.
Okay, and there are a couple of comments, 0 to 8 years or 18 years for children. So maybe the form was missing a 1.
It should be 0 to 18.
Okay, perfect.
Some of the places don't have the age on the form defined. So Maggie, let's make a note and we'll go through the form and put the age on each of the questions.
Okay. Oh, what about, someone's asking about going back to a current minister? What about their wife and kids being as part of their household?
So in terms of a spouse or children of a minister, if those individuals are members, and that would mean that they would either been received by the session through transfer of membership or by profession of membership, then yes. Or if they have not professed their faith or have not transferred a member, then they would be calculated as an adherent.
Okay. What if the revision of the roll finds that members need to be added rather than removed?
If members are added, then that would be, and maybe the line's not there, would be by act of session.
Okay. Under elders, does it include all elders as of December 31st, 2021?
Yes, who are active on the session.
Great. I think that is everyone.
Somebody asked if an elder died during the year, but you're saying it's who's ever still alive by the 31st?
Yeah, so the stat forms are as of December 31st.
All right, so let us move on then to weekly worship attendance. And this one, you know, this question seemed so easy up until we had COVID. And then all of a sudden we were like, well, how do you define weekly worship attendance in a time when people are now joining online so much more? And what does it mean? And I've had a few people email even very specific questions about this. So let's just talk about it. We know that 2020 was a year that changed the definition of weekly worship attendance for many. So in this section, what we're looking for is you to estimate as best you can what your normal weekly attendance would be for Sunday worship over the past year. So this used to say average weekly attendance. And we know that average, most of you like numbers and are mathematicians, average is very specific. You take the number, you divide up how many were there and what they're, divide it by how many weeks there were, and you get your average. But here we're really looking for normal. On your normal Sunday, what will you have, or what do you think that you will have? So some people were asking, well, what if our church was only open a couple of weeks? Or a couple of weeks each month, so it wasn't open 4 times a week. Well, just when it was open, what would your normal week attendance be? And so then when it comes to Zoom, you want to say, okay, it's subjective, and you need to know a little bit what your congregation is like. So it depends when you're doing online service, what mode you're using. For example, if you're doing a Zoom worship, and or you're doing an online worship that's projected, and it's the type of thing where the household is going to sit together, and you've got 4 or 5 people sitting together in their living room watching or participating in the worship service on one device, then you can say, oh, well, that's 4 people who have attended our worship service. But if it's Zoom, where everyone is on their own device, then you can say, oh, okay, well, the number we have in Zoom is probably close to the number that we have participating. So it's a bit of judgment call, and you have to know what is the device that you're using, who are the people that are attending, what's the feedback been, and it's really it's a bit of a guess. But what we're looking for is, have the numbers gone up, have they gone down, what's your feeling about the numbers, just to give us an idea how many people are participating in worship each year. So I think there's a few examples in the book that gives you an example of how to calculate how you might do it, and you can follow that. Heather, are there any questions that just related to this? Okay, yeah.
Somebody was saying for normal weekly worship attendance, if it's virtual only, like YouTube only,
yeah,
it's harder to trace that, I think.
Yeah, so you need to guess the best you can. We're not going to get exact. We know we're not going to get exact numbers. And so just determine the people that you know, the feedback from emails that you get. And also you know that some people are participating live and some people are watching the recordings. So you might want to look at the number of independent recordings, look at how many it's told you that have participated live, and then come up with your best guess.
Okay. I have some elders in emeritus. Are they included in my elder count?
Hi, it's Terry Lee again. No, only those elders who are currently serving on the session.
Okay.
Somebody said there were no normal services during COVID. I think just come up with a number, how many, it's a little bit, how many are participating in your church. So even if you're delivering, say, bulletins or emailing sermons to people, that something that you're staying connected. It's sort of like, what's your normal church participation? And if you can't come up with a number, maybe we'll have to add a not applicable or undeterminable or something.
Okay. Another question. We have a member who is also an elder, but has decided to go to a completely different church or denomination. He swears he will not come back. What do we do?
It's Terry Lee again. So if the person is still on the session, if the session has not removed that individual, and then they would be in contact with the presbytery, or if that individual has not resigned from session, then that person is still an elder and also a member of the congregation.
Okay. And what is defined as being under pastoral care?
Under pastoral care would mean that the person has a connection with the congregation, and the congregation has offered support for the individual, or any form of pastoral services, whether if they are calling an elder or a minister for assistance, but pastoral care is sort of that ongoing oversight of participation within a congregation.
Okay, and just one more regarding attendance. What about those who watch a local service by another church on the local television?
If they're not participating in your worship at all, I wouldn't include them in your worship attendance. They could still be a member of your congregation, but I wouldn't include them as attending your worship service. This is really about who's attending your worship service.
Okay,
If
and
they're doing
sorry,
both, great.
in a multi-point charge, are there any suggestions for calculating the number of attendees watching worship online?
Anybody else have some ideas? Because you're doing one service. I would say, again, we're looking for normal worship attendance. So I would say, if you can allocate them to the congregation that they normally attend, then try and do that. If you, depending on who you know and what they're doing, like, yeah, again, we're sort of looking for what the trends are. Do you think the participation, the attendance at your congregation has increased or decreased compared to last year from worship attendance? So yeah, it's a little bit subjective, but see what you can do.
And then
Divide
just a
them.
question about if people are worshiping with you but are not members or adherents. For example, they might be participating from throughout the province or overseas. How would you report that?
They would be attending your worship. Your worship attendance can be larger than your members and adherents. So you can put them down as attending your worship, and then your members and adherents should be the ones that you think are members and adherents. That said, I'm not sure why. I think somebody, if they were regularly attending online, they could be an adherent of your congregation, couldn't they, Terry Lee?
I'm sorry, Karen, say that again.
If somebody is attending your worship service online, even though regularly, even though they're in another province, can you consider them an adherent?
If they were supporting the congregation, I would say in terms of finance and other aspects of the life, then you could classify that person as an adherent to make sure that there's that relationship with them. However, if it's somebody who has joined the congregation to worship with them on a regular basis, I would just calculate that number in with the worshiping community.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Okay, maybe we can leave there are a couple more, but maybe we can move on and include these at the end.
Yeah, I'll just maybe do the one question that says, I think those who regularly receive the written sermon and newsletter, but they can't attend in person or online, I think you could include those. If you feel that they are, following the worship service and that they are participating because they're following, I think you could include them as part of your attenders. Do you think, Terry? I see Terry Lee nodding. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So